Next up, we have Matt Struckhoff, and he has a presentation entitled Direction or Diversion, Telling a Restoration Story. So by way of introduction, Matt is an ecologist at the U.S. Geological Survey, Columbia Environmental Research Center. He's focused there on tools and methods to inform ecological restoration planning and monitoring. While conducting research on the response of plants and plant communities to environmental stressors and management actions, Matt has tailored his work to provide actionable information for resource managers at multiple scales. And this includes facilitating the adoption of emerging technologies to enhance field data collection and then visualizing the monitoring results. So Matt, thanks very much for joining us, and over to you. Oh, Matt, I'm not hearing you just yet.
That would be because my microphone is off.
Now I hear you well.
Better? Okay.
Yes, take it away.
Let's see. Get rid of that. Okay, so thank you all for sticking around for a afternoon session. I know that this 2 o'clock, 2:30 time is my usual need for a nap time, but I hope that you'll find this interesting, perhaps informative, and I hope that you'll think of it as a lead into tomorrow's presentation or discussion that we want to have about field data collection tools and how we might use those to help us tell our restoration stories in both our data collection effort and how we present that data to those people with whom we work and to whom we're responsible. So when I speak about diversion, I think about research and monitoring that are perhaps interesting and perhaps are important, but which don't necessarily tell us if a restoration is on track. And by contrast, decision refers to data, analyses, and reporting that directly assess whether objectives are being met, that is to say restoration objectives are being met, and if not, can inform future adaptive management to push the restoration forward toward whatever its goals may be. So as we dive into this, a few assumptions to keep in mind is that we need to have well-defined restoration goals and objectives and appropriate metrics and methods for determining whether or not those are being met. And for the purposes of storytelling, we need an idea both of what positive and negative results look like, both on the ground and when we're reporting this information to our colleagues. And this is a good time to admit that some of what I'll be showing you is more of this envisioning of what these good and bad outcomes might look like. And some of the data that I'll be showing are imagined. That is to say, we'll look at some early results from a site and then kind of project forward as to what we might look for in terms of results of management actions and restoration effort. And then finally, I would say that we have this effort or this need for a storytelling plan, some sort of vision for how we're going to present information to our audiences wherever they may be. So you could use something like this Society of Ecological Restoration recovery wheel, which is shown bottom center. You might use mapping, like we're going to focus on in this effort, or you might use more traditional comparative analyses and graphing that are used to test for differences between treatments or times, as shown in the upper right. So for this exercise and this imagining of storytelling, we're going to be looking at an actual NRDAR restoration here in Southeast Missouri. This is the Little St. Francis River restoration, former site of lead mining with a restored area where there used to be a chat pile. This is a bottomland section, which is being returned to forest through planting. That's one of the primary restoration activities taking place on this site. And the other effort is really an improvement of migratory bird habitat in the uplands around that restoration, primarily through invasive species control. And we'll talk a little bit about both those efforts as we move forward. Some more background here. Here's 2 images of our site. On the left-hand side, we have USDA ecological site descriptions. These are based on dominant soils, landscape position, and provide information about the capacity of these different areas to support particular communities, the ecological dynamics that may go on there, and what degraded conditions may look like. On the right-hand side, we can see the current conditions in relation to those ecological site descriptions. At the north end, we have these igneous woodlands. These are dry upland woods occurring on granitic substrates. And at the bottom half, or the lower half of this site, we have primarily loamy dolomite forests in various stages of degradation due to past land use, including the mining, but also including grazing that took place over the last century. Just a little ecological context. So for our storytelling, we're going to focus on two elements: this invasive species control and the restoration of that former chat pile site. And in our studies, we looked at a number of different exotic species at this site. Today, we're going to focus primarily on amber or bush honeysuckle, the first one on the list there. And I include on here eastern red cedar. It is not an invasive species. It's not exotic. And in fact, it is quite native in Missouri. But it does create problems because it can invade degraded areas, particularly after grazing on the site. And the other half that we'll be looking at is the restoration of this bottomland site where the former chat pile was to improve migratory bird habitat. And it was through planting of species that you see here. So as we started, we envisioned that field mapping of invasive species would be one of the primary methods by which we could collect data, as well as present that information to shareholders and people involved with the management of the site and pushing this restoration forward. And this is a little preview for what we'll be discussing tomorrow in the workshop portion. We'll be talking about tools or field data tools for data collection and presentation. So on the right-hand side, what we see here overall is the site has been gridded out into 20 by 50 meter sections. And we sampled each and every one of these by walking through them across their long axis. As we entered a site, we would use our handheld phone or GPS to call up this location. We'd see where we were in relation to it. So as we entered one side, we'd see our little X here saying that's where we were. We could tap on it and it would bring up this option of which one we're interested in. And then we could click the little edit tool at the lower left. And I'm afraid you're not being able to see that, but that's okay. And what you get is an option for data entry. In the center, we can see the various fields that are available. In this case, we have a little bit of information about the community, as well as this whole suite of species that we were interested in documenting on the site. All or almost all of these were invasive species that we anticipated would be an issue on the site as we move forward. And when you select on any of them, in this case, amber honeysuckle, shown on the right, you get an option for determining or providing an estimate of its foliar cover within the cell. You make that selection, you hit the check mark, and then you're done collecting for that cell. And you can do that for every species in the cell, or only those that you encountered in that site. So we did that for bush honeysuckle as well as 20 or more other species on the site. It took us about 2 days to map this entire 100-acre area, roughly. And we're able to generate for each species a map such as the one you're looking at now, which show the abundance of this species across the site in relation to existing community types, or if we wanted to, in relation to those ecological site descriptions that we have for the area. So for bush honeysuckle here, we can see that obviously there's a bit more of it in the southern portion of the study area. And you can see that it tends to occur along margins of different community types, perhaps where you're switching between a cedar old field or you have some sort of road going through an area. Now we get into the envisioning what it's going to look like in the future, or what we hope it will look like in the future. And that's where the next bit of data comes in, which is completely contrived. But what I've done here is imagined what the actions would be, or what the result of management actions would be on reducing this species or changing its abundance generally. So here we have a set of imagined data from 2019, the year after the initial restoration effort to remove this species. What we see is that the amount of the species is reduced on the site. And particularly in that lower portion, you can see greater reductions because there was more to start with. Also, you can see in the upper areas of the igneous knobs and the top half of that study area, you see a few cells that have new established populations of this amber honeysuckle. Conversely, we can look at the different areas that may be above or below a certain threshold. So on the left-hand side, I've identified all those cells that had cover values greater than 1% before the restoration began. And then on the right-hand side, all those cells that have cover above that level following the initial restoration activity. What we can see is that through the activities that were done on the site, you have a reduction from about 144 cells where that threshold was exceeded, and a reduction to about 36 cells after that restoration action was taken place. So that would be good news. This is what we would like to see. And when we see things that are different than this, maybe that's a clue to us that we need to implement some sort of alternative restoration activity. Alternatively, we can look at how much we've reduced from our starting conditions. So on the left-hand side, we're looking at reductions. So darker colors tend to indicate where we have reduced the abundance of a particular species, in this case, bush honeysuckle. And those ones that are highlighted indicate where there's been an increase. So maybe we missed some, maybe there's been some new population established. Maybe it's a question of just the sampling and the quality of the data that was collected in one year or another. But you can also look at those same cells where there's been increases in relation to the current value or the next step of that process. And that's what you see on the right-hand side. So this is post-treatment. Where are we getting new populations? These are just all different ways to look at this data, present information to your shareholders and to your cooperators so that you can move forward and do the next step in the data, next step in the restoration. I'm going to allow this video to play. I hope you'll bear with me, and I hope it works. So here I've attempted to present two portions of a story. One is relating to the development of migratory bird habitat in that restored area, presenting information about our ability to do stem level monitoring over what is a relatively small area. If we add additional data from UAS, we can do a more thorough documentation of the changing habitat structure. And primarily, we're interested in providing information that will inform any sort of adaptive management that may be necessary. So as an example, in that southern portion of the planted area where more dead trees were documented, perhaps there's some additional need to understand what may be affecting the survival of species in that area. Is there some sort of residual contaminant there? Are there other environmental factors that are beyond the scope of NRDA, but which are important for allowing this restoration to move forward? The other half of this story is, are we controlling invasive species and reaching our management and restoration goals as identified in the plan for the site? And for that purpose, this map-based assessment promises to be more effective than statistical analyses that may say, oh, yes, this is more, this is less. We can see that much easier in a map. We can tell that story much more easily in a map. And we can identify areas where we may need to do additional actions moving forward. And with that, I hope you'll attend tomorrow's session where we'll be talking about ways that we can collect field data to inform this type of storytelling and to inform, the future management of sites as we try and push them toward these restoration goals that have been identified. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Matt. I don't see any questions in the Q&A right now. Does anybody have one?
No questions? Great. Hopefully they're all saving them for tomorrow.
Here, here. Well, thanks, Matt, for those tips on using data and mapping and visualization to tell a compelling story about our restoration efforts. I do look forward to your session tomorrow so we can learn some more about these data collecting techniques.